Good morning. I'm the Reverend Molly Housh Gordon, the minister of this congregation. I'm so delighted to see each and every one of you here this morning. I am a white woman in the very last year of her 30s wearing a black dress with a blue scarf, and I have red hair that's very long on one side and very short on the other. And I begin with our opening words from the Reverend Kim Mason. Once upon a time, chemists believed they could transform lead into gold or death into life. We laugh, but are we not also in the business of alchemy? Turning loneliness into connection, pain into comfort, anger into solidarity, faith into action. The subtle magic of church combines love with justice, creates hope from fear, transforms individuals into community. Here, we engage in a holy alchemy, finding beauty in the ordinary and life in the present. Here, we draw forth the real-life magic from within us, the faith within, the hope and love and joy within. We draw it forth to transform the world. So let us begin with song. Our opening hymn is number 368, Now Let Us Sing, and we will be led this morning in our opening hymn by a it's not a quartet, yes, thank you. I was expecting a trio and four of them walked up and I couldn't remember the words. A quadro? A quartet of the Arnolds and the Ordways.
Now let us sing.
Sing to the power of the faith within.
Now let us sing.
Sing to the power of the faith
Sing, lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing.
Sing to the power of the hope within.
Now let us sing.
Sing to the power of the hope
Sing,
within.
lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing.
Sing to the power of the love within.
Now let us sing.
Sing to the power of the love within.
Sing, lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing.
Sing to the power of the joy within.
Now let us sing.
Sing to the power of the joy within.
Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within.
Good morning. My name is Todd Iveson. I'm the worship associate this morning. I am an older white male with graying, very short hair, and today I'm wearing a blue shirt and gray slacks. As I light our chalice this morning, will you please join me in the words of affirmation printed in your order of service? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
The words of Lynn Cox. Creative Spirit, source of life and love, we give thanks for the beauty of this day and for the company of those assembled here. We give thanks for the breezes of change, clearing our heads and bringing fresh ideas. May they cleanse our minds of the oppressions and isms that divide and harm us. We give thanks for the flame of hope, the heat of righteous anger, the warmth of compassion, and the fire of commitment. May they bubble the cauldrons of transformation. We give thanks for oceans of love, rivers of connection, tears of relief, and pools of serenity. May healing waters flow over us and through us and among us, wearing down the sharp rocks of despair to bring joy in the morning. We give thanks for the good earth, beneath us, around us, within us. May we take this clay and co-create a new realm of justice and beauty. We give thanks for all these and more, accepting our gifts and committing to building, sculpting, painting, singing, and dancing them to life, always to more abundant life. So be it. Amen. And I'd like to welcome our quartet forward again to lead us in singing hymn number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life.
So I think this way of doing hymns is a little odd, a little different than we're used to, but essentially we're just singing the same notes that the piano sings all the time sometimes.
Yeah.
We have different accompaniments sometimes, but anyway, we're singing all the notes in here. So we're gonna just hum a little intro, and then we'll start in on the first verse. So.
Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts flow restlessly, let peace find a home in me. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Help me live my wordless creed as I comfort those in need. Fill me with compassion, be the source of my intuition. Then when life is done for me, let love be my legacy.
Our readings this morning are from the Earthseed duo of books from Black futurist author Octavia Butler. Published in 1993, Parable of the Sower imagines a near-future climate dystopia. The book begins in the year 2024. It follows the resilient teenager, Lauren Alamina, who goes on a journey of survival and invents a religion along the way that she calls Earthseed. The invented Earthseed scripture in the books has resonated profoundly with readers who study process theology and has become a touchstone for a whole community of social justice movement organizers. For those of you unfamiliar with the clairvoyance of Octavia Butler as a science fiction writer, in her second Earthseed book, Parable of the Talents, published in 1998, she describes a right-wing presidential candidate who tacitly approves his supporters' violent tactics and offers the following invitation: join us Leave your sinful past behind and become one of us. Help us to make America great again. It's in the book. Today, our reading is an assortment of passages from the Earthseed Scripture sprinkled throughout both books. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. We do not worship God. We perceive and attend God. We learn from God. With forethought and work, we shape God. In the end, we yield to God. We adapt and endure, for we are earth seed, and God is change. All successful life is adaptable, opportunistic, tenacious, interconnected, and fecund. Understand this. Use it. Shape God. We are earth seed, the life that perceives itself changing. There is no end to what a living world will demand of you. God is change, and in the end, God prevails. But meanwhile, kindness eases change, love quiets fear, and sweet and powerful positive obsession blunts pain, diverts rage, and engages each of us in the greatest, the most intense of our chosen struggles. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Shape God. Here ends the reading.
Four years ago today, early April 2020, I was enduring a world and a life that had changed beyond recognition in the matter of a few weeks. You were too. Do you remember? Has your body been quietly reminding you this last month while you wondered, what is this faint dis-ease? 4 years ago, every routine had been upended. Every tool we had been using to manage the ceaseless flow of changing life had been snatched away from us, and we were figuring out how to survive. 4 years ago today, we were figuring out how to survive. Breathe with that a minute. Slow your heart back down. We were figuring out how to survive, and we were finding out that survival meant more than avoiding novel pathogens and procuring food and toilet paper and making a living in a cruel economy. We were finding out how to survive and learning that survival also meant connection and collective hope and human care. 4 years ago, we were figuring out how to survive, which is another way to say that we were adapting dramatically and at breakneck speed. And the change itself, which is to say the pandemic, was awful. Terrible, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Unredeemable. And the ways the powerful adapted, or rather refused to adapt, the way they tried to ignore the change and prepared to sacrifice us all to the gods of economic gain was also awful. F-. Utter failure, inexcusable. But the ways we adapted, the ways we survived and cared about each other's survival, we, the people in our houses, in our neighborhoods, on our pitiful, wonderful Zoom calls, the way we adapted was beautiful, really hard, and really beautiful. One of my social media accounts gifted me a memory this week of Scott Denson 4 years ago, playing accordion in my yard, sitting on a tall stool, sitting on a tall stool 20 yards away while my children, who were absolutely stir-crazy, danced in the grass. And I was reminded so profoundly how ingeniously we figured out ways to love each other amid impossible circumstances. How we rode this terrible, awful, no good, very bad wave of change and found ways to attend not only to one another's survival, but to the survival of joy. And all of this is to remember in our bones that humans can shape change so beautifully sometimes, in the face of the greatest of odds, the most terrible of struggles. Our capacity for compassion and inspiration and hope in the darkness, they have carried us through horrible waves of change. And they will keep carrying us if we can manage to stay attuned to them. If we can manage to stay intentional about how we move through change, maybe we can harness the waves and shift them towards love. We've seen that we can. In this moment, 4 years after everything changed entirely, irreparably, perhaps we might also pause for a moment and thank those selves of 4 years ago, those overwhelmed, grief-stricken, terrified selves. We can thank and praise those selves for adapting, for finding ways to keep living and keep loving, for refusing to leave behind beauty or to sacrifice our capacity for joy. And we can take a minute also to forgive those selves for the ways we tried to stay intact that didn't work, or didn't serve us, or didn't live up to love's call. And we can take a minute to assure those selves, these 4 years later, that we did make something beautiful out of all that terrible change. You know, 4 years ago today, we were talking a lot about flattening the curve of contagion. And the thing we don't talk about enough in the wake of that terrible time when so many and so much were lost is that we did it. Even despite the misinformation campaigns of an extremist administration, even despite the deadly demands of a cruel economic structure, public health experts all agree we did flatten the curve. Humans all over the globe adapted their behavior on a dime, miraculous. And together we saved millions of lives. Across the globe, together for each other, we did something anyone would tell you was impossible. We changed our behavior. Dramatically, to save millions of lives. No one ever really encouraged us to celebrate that. But my God, think back, can you believe we did that? We shaped the hell out of God, which is to say change, which is to say the forces of incredible duress upon us. Yes, we lost so many, and we lost so much. And we have grieved, and we are grieving, and we will grieve, but let us not forget to marvel as well that billions of us pulled together and saved millions of us. And that all of this is a stunning testament to how intentionally adaptable humans can be. We managed to harness even a tendril of that massive force of destruction and pull it toward collectivism and toward care for one another is both a miracle and pretty consistent with what it means to really be human together. After all, millennia of evolution have adapted us into deeply social creatures. We are oriented toward care in ways that break through even the deadliest isolating forces of the universe or of human-created empires. We adapted toward each other when we flattened the curve for our neighbor's survival. And we adapted toward each other as well in all the ways we chose the collective during that time, in spite of the encouragements of cynical forces of power and extremism telling us to leave one another behind. And they were telling us that. But we adapted toward each other instead. We formed the most robust mutual aid networks our societies had seen in decades. We made educational and childcare co-ops. We dropped so many things on each other's porches. We banged on pots to support our healthcare workers and howled at the moon to keep each other sane. And each of those acts was a profound resistance to the forces that would have us adapt to isolation and scarcity. Instead, millions of us adapted toward love. We could not be stopped from loving each other. A dear colleague of mine lost her beautiful 2-year-old child during the early months of the pandemic, and when her community couldn't gather for the usual deep holding that communities provide, they disrupted traffic in 3 counties in southern New Jersey to drive in a miles-long parade by her house, hanging out the windows to love her family, to say nothing can stop us from loving you. Even in the most terrible of circumstances, horror piled upon horror, we cannot be stopped from loving one another. But it's a choice that we make intentionally. It's not something that just happens. One of the most important truths in Octavia Butler's Earthseed scripture is the deep acknowledgement that whatever is ultimate in this world, whatever most fully shapes this world, appears to be morally neutral. Butler says God is change, and change is sometimes beautiful and sometimes terrible. Change is not a moral good in and of itself. Change simply is. It's how we shape change that plies the ethical. It is our adaptive choices that push or pull change through great effort and sometimes at great cost, but always with great intention, that moves change toward care, toward we, toward love. It's how we grab onto change and wrestle it to the most humane version we possibly can that shows us who we can be, that shows us who our faith calls us to be. Octavia Butler says God is change. Process theologians would say the ultimate reality is change, and God is the force of love that helps us shape change. Many of us might throw out the G word entirely. But change is the driving factor all around us. And it is ours, as Octavia says, to shape change. And not just to shape change, but to shape change toward mutual thriving, to shape change toward love. Because it's actually not even enough just to shape change. We have to shape it toward care. Our adaptive capacities as humans are incredible, but they are also value neutral. We can shape the forces around us in ways that are generative and beautiful, and we can also adapt in ways that are destructive and extractive. We know this deeply in our current moment of human-generated climate crisis. Our capacity to shape change and therefore to shape the world can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse. It has been both. In these precarious times, we must adapt toward love. Our adaptation needs to be intentional, and it needs to be relational. Butler says that change is God, and those who not shape change become victims of change. It's the same with all of the idolatrous wannabe deities of our world. Shape change or capital will. Shape change or nationalism will. Shape change or any number of supremacy systems will. Not only will they shape change, but if we're not paying close attention, they will use us as their proxies to make the change. And it will not be an adaptation towards love, but towards scarcity and mistrust and suffering and fear. Our adaptation must be intentional so that we do not become proxy for someone else's intentions. Butler says that humans are the life that perceive themselves changing. We are this embodiment of the universe that can be intentional about how we respond to the forces of change around us, how we shape things. We can be intentional, but we aren't always. It's really, really hard to stay grounded enough to attend deeply to how we are shaping change. You know, the places the most beautiful responses to the pandemic arose were in communities that had already been practicing how to tend to one another's survival, had already been practicing how to root in care and shape the world toward love. Because it takes really deep attention and intention. It takes a lot of practice to shape change beautifully, to shape it towards mutual thriving. Let's practice now, here in this place. Always, we need to practice because there's only more change ahead. Butler says change will prevail, but kindness eases change. And amid all the changes we're facing, amid all the forces that benefit from pulling us away from one another, it is so tempting to seize some sense of control, batten down the hatches, protect only ourselves. It's so hard to turn out toward the we, a position that opens our heart and makes them vulnerable. But adaptation for just you is actually impossible. We are too entangled for that. And shaping change without attention to all the ways we're tangled up creates deep harm. The deepest harm done in the pandemic emerged directly from the powerful lies that we could not care about each other and survive. The refusals to mask or vaccinate, the encouragement to abandon one another. It was deadly. It is deadly. And so our adaptation must also be relational. Change will prevail, but kindness eases change. And when we choose each other, when we intentionally shape change toward we, toward mutual thriving, toward care upon care, like we did 4 years ago, like we try to practice every week, every day in this place, when we shape change intentionally toward care, when we cannot be stopped from loving each other, then the world is made new, and we are kept whole, no matter what swirls around us. If life is a dance, and I hope it is, if life is a dance, then change is in the lead, but we can dance backwards in heels. We can make it beautiful. We can make it ours. So won't you sing with me? Hymn number 311, Let It Be a Dance. I invite you to rise or remain seated in body or in spirit, whatever works best for your body on this day.
Let
That song always makes me want to cha-cha. Now is the time in our service when we celebrate generosity as a core value of this community. This week's collection is a Faith to Action collection, and this month's Faith to Action partner is Missouri River Relief. During another musical offering from the band, you can give with cash or check in the offering plate in person, or you can use the giving details in your order of service to give online or by text. But first, let's hear a word from UU Churcher Lynn Malley about the World of Missouri River Relief that our Faith to Action collection this month will fund. Lynn?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm an older white woman with short brown hair, a black top, and black slacks. And first, I'd like to say thanks to the Social Justice Committee for choosing Missouri River Relief as the Faith to Action recipient for this month. How many of you have heard of River Relief? Wow. How many of you have been on any of their programs, participated? How many of you have volunteered? I'm so impressed. It really does match our congregation in so many ways. I brought along a green t-shirt to show you. Not sure what you can see from where you are, but it shows a canoe with many very different animals in it and says, "All are welcome here." It's my pleasure to have been a volunteer crew member with River Relief for the last 6 or 7 years. It's a nonprofit organization whose mission is to engage in individuals and communities along the Missouri River in the exploration, enjoyment, restoration, and care of the river through hands-on river cleanups, educational programs, and recreation. They are funded by grants and by donations from people like us. River Relief has been hosting Missouri River cleanups since 2003 and riverboat races since 2008. In 2010, they started a monthly speaker series, which continues at the Reichman Pavilion at Stevens Lake, as well as in Kansas City and St. Louis. In 2016, Missouri River Days began. This is one I think you may have heard of or had a child or grandchild participate in. Every fourth grader in the Columbia Public School System participates for a half day on the river. They get to do artwork, hikes, and a boat ride. And for many of them, it's the first time they've been to the river, much less in a boat out on the river. In 2013, Missouri River Academy Summer Camp was held. It also continues today, and it now offers scholarships for those who would not otherwise be able to attend. In 2019, sunset cruises were added in a partnership with the Columbia Parks and Rec. If you want to get out on the river, this is something that you might be interested in. I think it filled up for the spring rides in the first day, or maybe 20 minutes, but the rides will be offered again in the fall. Volunteers are the backbone of this organization. I know it sounds ridiculous, but their website says by 2023, which is when they were 20 years old, more than 33,000 people had volunteered. I expect that means many who volunteered multiple times, but still an incredible number. By 2021, river cleanups had removed a total of over 2 million pounds of trash. More recently, River Relief has added a program for 0 to 5-year-olds and their caretakers, as well as made available for loan backpacks to carry children who cannot walk alone yet and whose caretakers do not have access to that kind of backpack. They've taken groups from Douglas High School and Job Point out on the river, as well as many other groups. In the last few years, they've become more intent even on emphasizing diversity, equity, and inclusion in their programs. And they've developed an action plan which includes strengthening meaningful and strategic partnerships, examining programs with a culturally relevant lens, and promoting meaningful connections between individuals and communities, in a manner that is consistent with cultural context. I've seen the effects of this emphasis in the more culturally and age-diverse people who come to River Relief events. In the last few years, it's been my privilege to volunteer with the fourth graders on Missouri River Days, the program for 0 to 5-year-olds, and one cleanup. I've been given 5 minutes to talk, but know that I could go on for much longer. I won't stand between you and the potluck. I hope that you will consider participating in one or more of these activities, as well as making a contribution to Missouri River Relief to assure that these events continue and grow. I'll have information about upcoming events in the entryway on your way out. I'm happy to answer any questions then. Thank you.